Hi everybody, SW Miron here. This is episode 20, can't even believe it, of Glass Skull's mental health podcast. I hope you guys are having a good day. I am going to start by sharing a little bit from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I made you guys a promise last time that I was going to read this to you, and then we ran out of time. So I'm going to start with that so we can make sure that you can hear this today. I am an individual. If you've read my book, and if you haven't, this might be news to you, but this is my book, Scenes from My Skeleton Closet by S.W. Miron. It's my memoir. It tells my life story of 20 years of battling mental illness and addiction and lots of other challenging stuff. But if you've read the book, you'll find out that I'm someone that has attempted suicide before, and I am so fortunate to still be here. Part of why I take the time out of my life to do everything that I do that is mental health oriented is because of that gratitude that I have that I'm still here. So I'll never stop. I am so committed to so many different little projects that I got going on, between the next book that I'm writing, the documentary I was just in for To Write Love on Her Arms. If you're interested, it's on YouTube. It's free to watch. It doesn't cost you anything. It's called To Write Love. So it's really like the story behind the movement. And ironically, that organization was created 20 years ago. It's the 20th anniversary. So I'm honored that I got to speak in that documentary and share some of my story and talk a little bit about suicide. So this is some information about changing your brain when it comes to thinking about how you talk about suicide. Because I know from experience that it is really hurtful to hear the words committed suicide. So if you're scratching your head and you're like, why is that offensive? Maybe this will change your mind. This is from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. When referring to someone who has killed themselves, it's better to say they have died by suicide instead of saying they have committed suicide. Small language change has a huge impact in saving lives. Research has shown that the term committed has a negative connotation associated with it, making people with suicidal thoughts feel guilty for how they're feeling. If people feel greeted with shame instead of comfort and understanding when reaching out for help, they may never get help. That makes sense to me. If you said committed suicide, it's safe language. It's something that we have to learn about. Moving forward, if you were talking about someone who's lost their life to suicide, try discussing without the harsh term committed. It seems like such a small thing, okay? And maybe it's something that is a little bit picky, but it matters. The words you use matter. And I don't think that that's something that I really thought too deeply about, my word choice, until I was in my master's program for literacy, and I learned a bunch about, the impact that the way you go about saying something, how that impacts the way the person's gonna take what you said, or feel some type of way. It used to not bother me when someone would talk about suicide and say, oh, so and so committed suicide. But I will say, I found that article from the American Association for Suicide Prevention on Facebook, and I it stopped me in my tracks. Like, it really made me think. It was like a solid 2 days that it like wouldn't get out of my brain, that I was like, wow, I never really thought about the power of word choice. Committed. When I think of committed, I think of a crime. I can immediately, with that metaphor, I can immediately understand why it would be offensive to some people. Or maybe not like offensive, like they're like like they're mad, but like they might be hurt or like feel really sad, upset, angry, mixed, tough feelings. And like, I don't know, life is hard enough as it is, just at baseline for everyone on this spinning rock. But if you battle mental illness, it's just an extra layer on top of all the bullshit that we already have to deal with. So just be mindful. Try to really think about what you say before you say it, because the impact that it could have on the person standing next to you on the bus when you're headed to work, while you're talking about whatever you're talking about, maybe they've been through what you're discussing and it's a topic that is, a little intense and could really trigger somebody else. And it's really important to understand that you need to think bigger than yourself. That's something I've been saying a lot lately. And speaking of saying, today's strategy that I want to talk about is self-talk. Now, I used to fight my therapist about this strategy. After many, many years of practice, I will say self-talk is probably one of my most regularly utilized strategies for coping with my shifts in mood and anxiety throughout the day, every single day. If you haven't heard of self-talk before, it quite literally means talking to yourself. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So, this is how I do self-talk. I used to, well, first of all, I just want to clarify. Yes, I used to fight with my therapist about this, but it was just because I wasn't a believer, right? The strategy wasn't working for me. I wasn't connecting with it. It wasn't resonating. So therefore, I was kind of pushing back. If a strategy is not working for you, there's really not a need to push back. It's just, don't use that strategy, but I can't go back in time and tell that to, my 16-year-old self. But my therapist forgave me. She still, to this day, reminds me when I go every single week that self-talk is probably one of the strongest ways to mindfully take control over your emotions and bring yourself some peace. This week in particular, I've had a pretty tough time with my mental health, if I'm being like fully transparent. I recently have had some significant changes go on. I've had a change in med provider and then a change in a bunch of medications. And typically, when you're changing medications and changing providers and all this stuff, you're like weaning off very slowly and carefully with your provider. I'm not going to give you the details behind why the changes needed to be made, but I needed to try something new, right? Sometimes with medication, I've come to find over my 20 years of, swallowing pills every single day, there were times in my life I was on 2 pills. 2 different prescriptions. One was an antidepressant, one was anti-anxiety, and that was all I needed to get me through. I was great. That really helped hold me together, helped me keep my composure in situations that I felt like the sky was falling down on me and I just was so overwhelmed so fast. Or just anything that elicits a strong, intense, negative emotion. So yeah, I am experiencing some side effects from going off of medication. And I needed to go off of those medications because there were starting to be side effects that were happening that were negative while I was taking them. So it's a dance. You learn as you go. It's not for everybody to maybe take medication as part of the toolbox that you use to treat your mental illness. But I do really want to emphasize, like, I don't know, if you haven't tried it and you've exhausted many other avenues, like, it might be something to talk to your doctor about or talk to your therapist about or something like that, because I was one of those people. I pushed back and was like, I don't want to have to take medicine every day to be okay. This makes me feel broken, that kind of mentality. I was also, 15. I just gone through like one of the most traumatic things a person can go through. And, the medications that I was trying at the time, they just weren't it. They weren't what was really the right fit for the chemicals that are, missing in my brain, or there's too much of that chemical in my brain, or whatever the math problem is. But I'm grateful. The side effects have subsided. I'm like, one that was really bad is the other night I literally stayed awake for, I had a whole night's sleep that I didn't get at all. And like, I know everybody might have a night in their life that they don't have a great night's sleep. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. This is different. I was wide awake, sitting up in my bed, like clamping my hands onto the mattress, feeling so consumed with like the most intense anxiety I've felt in a really, really long time. And it was just like racing thoughts. And of course, are they racing, positive, happy thoughts? No. Unfortunately not. So that night was like honestly going through hell. It was a very long night. And I know it was probably only like 10 hours or something, but it was long. And then I went to work the next morning because I pushed myself. I was like, okay, I'm not going to let, getting no sleep, like, bench me from my life or like make it so that I have to stay home from work. But now, upon reflection, like thinking back at the choice I made, I probably should have just stayed home. Like, if something like that happens to you while you're, going through these motions, don't feel bad if you need to take a day for your mental health. I actually strongly encourage all humans to take a mental health day once in a while. Like, just, it doesn't have to be because you're having a hard time, right? It could just be because you're taking some time for you. And that, I think, helps keep your life balanced, between all the stressors that we constantly have to worry about, paying the bills, going to work, people in our lives that are challenging to be around sometimes, other circumstances that are challenging. So, yeah, medication, it's a tough one, but definitely it's worth the negatives. The positives outweigh the negatives. Sorry, I said that backwards. But I'm going to share with you the lyrics that I have that were from the original draft of Scenes from My Skeleton Closet. This lyric is by a band called The Academy Is. I probably haven't listened to them since I was 15, but like I emphasized in the very beginning of this video, word choice, powerful, right? And that's part of why I connect so strongly to lyrics in music. It's not just the actual music that I'm listening to that makes me feel better and makes me feel less stressed or, just whatever I need at the time. But I, also, I don't know, it's something that as a writer, like it impacts like the way now that I even think about my writing. You know, I want to make sure that the word choice is made very carefully. All right, without any further ado, the lyrics are: some things I may have taken for granted again and again. Well, here's what you said then. Hold your head high, heavy heart. So take a chance and make it big, because it's the last you'll ever get. With that, I think it's time to say goodbye for this week. But thank you so much if you are here to watch this video. I hope that you find some helpful information between, you know, talking about medication, talking about self-talk. You don't have to, by the way, like actually talk to yourself out loud. I mean, you can if you want to. It's fine. It's not. But I kind of just do it where I think about the things I want to say to myself in my head and I repeat them over and over. So if you want to give it a try, that's a hack for it. I hope everybody has a great rest of your week, and I hope that you try out some of these strategies that you're learning. You're stacking up quite the toolbox. Thank you so much, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Bye.